Alright, today we're going to be doing an art review and critique video for one of my patrons. His name is Daniel, and he inked a I think it's JLA piece that's penciled by Brian Hitch. JSA is one of the characters from JSA is actually a team of characters from DC Comics, where there's Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, and all those superheroes in there. So a little bit about me before we start the video. My name is Walden Wong, comic book artist from Marvel and DC. You can check out some of my work on my website, is waldenwongart.com. And if you enjoy these videos and you're also looking for someone to review and critique your artwork, you can check out my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/waldenwongart. Over there, there's different tiers that you can check out and see which one works best for you. So without further ado, let's check out my Patreon's artwork, the inking work over Brian Hitch. Here we go. Alright, so this is the page. Before we take a look at the inks, let's take a look at the pencils first. So here are the pencils. Lots of characters on the first panel that Brian Hitch did for DC Comics. Looks like the second panel over here is like a lot of maybe a space alien floating on top of like a city, and then the third panel is like people walking around, and there's like aliens falling down on top of them, and then Superman just goes and takes a look. Okay, and then now let's take a look at the inks. So right over here, let's see. I'm gonna grab and look. So the first panel, right off the bat, it looks pretty good. Some of the things, some of what I see, like characters that's close to the front, does have a thicker line. For example, like this Batarang over here. So that's pretty good. Let's take a look. So right over here, I think when I'm inking, I like to have. I'll think of the whole image as foreground, middle ground, background, and at the same time I'm also thinking about one character. For example, like here's a Batman. I'm also thinking about foreground, middle ground, background. That said, the fist here, I would have made this a little bit thicker around this side, and then going on this, you see how this image here, Batman's arm right here, that arm is way too thick compared to this the head over here. So I would ease back on this line and then make this side a little bit thicker, okay, just to pop those forward. And then next we have Cyborg going in the back. Try to keep the holding lines a little bit more consistent. Like right here, I'll see this nice thick line, and then over here, it gets kind of narrow here, so make sure you make that a little bit thicker. Same with this, you have a nice thick line on this part, but as you get towards this section, why is it so thin? Make sure they're consistent. If you really need to like give it like a different texture, I would add line waist thick to thin over there. Okay, so Cyborgs here, I would go in there and kind of add a little bit of a texture to it. Instead of just like a solid black and white, I would add maybe a little bit of dots around here, just to give it a little bit of a light area, a gray area to the black area. Okay, so we have Cyborg's arm, and then we have the Flash. Flash looks okay. Let's see, make sure you taper some of these lines a little bit better. You look at the spacing on this line and the spacing on that line. These two is okay, but then the spacing on this one is a little bit too far apart. I would add maybe another one over there. Okay. Yeah, so right here, Daniel, I think you really need to focus on foreground, middle ground, background. Some areas are really thick, like this knee over here, and then when you look at this character, her back, like it's so thin. Ease up on this part here. Okay, let me do that again. Ease up on this part, and then thicken up this part. Okay, it's really important that you have lines thicker in the foreground and thinner in the background. So for example, like look how thick this line, look how thick. Let's take a look at the pencil. Sometimes the pencil will draw things thick, but being an inker, your job is to go in there and make things pop forward or push things through the background. Not all pencilers know how to ink, and then when they draw, they're just drawing the way they're drawing it, and then you as an inker, you should go in there and make things more readable. So like for example, Wonder Woman, I would make this part a little bit more thicker, like that, okay? Let me take a look at the rest. Same thing. Let's take a look at the pencils. So the penciler drew the line weights over here on this arm and then this fist over here, kind of the same. But when you're inking, you really need to make sure this part is thicker. Okay, this part is thicker, and then this other arm is way too thick over there. Okay, let's take a look at the pencils again. Take a look at this. Try to go a little bit thinner. Like, see if you can when you're inking, see if you can start like these lines like nice and sharp, like really sharp tip instead of a blunt starting. Just go in there and kind of like sharpen that up a little bit. So if you're using a brush, I like to go in there, like for example, I like rotate, and I would go in there and go slowly press down into it. Or you can go the other direction and then kind of like ink that line and then ease up on it to get that thin line. Just this line over here is a little bit crackling. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other areas. Let's see. Bounce your line weights as much as you can. Some of the lines, they're kind of scratchy over here. So when you're bouncing your line weights, I'm going to demonstrate, for example, like this arm over here. So if I was inking this line, I would go like this and then like that. Try to get it as smooth as you can. Some of the lines, they're kind of crunchy. And then I also noticed that you have a lot of overlapping lines. Let's see if the penciler did that. So for example, like right over here, this area right here, this line should not be there. Okay, make sure you don't overlap lines when you're inking. I noticed that like at the get-go when I was looking at for example, like the outside panels over here. Alright, so this part here shouldn't overlap lines. I know it's outside of the panels, and then you want to make sure like you stay inside. Areas like this, make sure you erase that. Okay, so sometimes when I'm doing artwork for Marvel and DC, after I'm done inking it and I scan it, I also do post-production work, which means I'll look at the scans, and then if it's not clean, I'll go in there and I'll clean it up a little bit. Okay, so I'll look at the panel borders, and the panel borders have stuff coming out. I will go in there and kind of clean it up a little bit. So when I'm scanning artwork, I also still go in there and kind of clean up some of the line work over there. Okay, let's take a look at the inks over here. So this part, this section here, if I was taking this, based on what I see in the pencils, this one looks like this is a shadow right over here. So I would fill all of this in black. Fill all of this in black, and then this part I would also fill black as well as this part, and then here I would erase this part and then fill this part in black like that. I think that's what the penciler was asking for. Okay, and let's see, let's try not to overtake the shadows. When I say that, make sure, like for example, when I'm looking at the penciler, the shadow goes up to here. So when you're inking, you're kind of changing it a little bit, which is okay, but make sure you're also thinking about the light source of where everything is and everything makes sense. Okay, let me take a look at the inks over here. Okay, it looks like Brian Hitch, when he's penciling, he has some cross hatching over here. So when I say cross hatching, looks like there's some work that goes, let me see this. For example, right over here, we go here. Let me see. So there's some lines that goes this direction, some taper lines that goes this direction, and there's some taper lines that goes this direction. Okay, so that should have been there. Let me go in there and demonstrate how I would ink it. So in this part, I'm gonna rotate it. Okay, rotate it, and then this part I'll go thick to thin, you know, like this. And I'm gonna do this really quickly, and then I'll rotate it again, and then I'll go thin to thick, whichever way you're interested in doing it, thick to thin or thin to thick. So there's a little bit of cross hatching over here, but when you're inking it, you only did it on one direction. I know some pencilers, they like to do that cross hatching look on the line. So let's take a look to see, like for example, yeah, I see it over here also. So here, there should be some lines that goes upwards to the right this direction, like this way. and then it goes back this way. Okay, so when you inked it, you only had like this this line here, and then a few lines going that way. Let's see what else. I'm gonna take a look at the pencils first. So when I'm making comic books, usually I'll look at the pencil piece and then I'll study it for a little bit. I don't just go in there and start inking. I'll look at it a little bit, think about where I can make line weights different, and not different, but pop the characters out. And then I'll also look at how the pencils are inked. Like for example, that right here, like I see it right away. Like right over here, we have Brian Hitch drawing the pencil lines going this direction, and then he'll rotate it, and then it will go this direction. Okay, so the way I would approach this, okay, I would ink this one here. Let's zoom in. I would go thin to thick, thin to thick, thin to thick. I would just keep doing that. I would close up the line nicely, and if it doesn't close nicely, I'll go back in there and kind of like add to it, and then I would rotate it again, and then this time I would follow what the penciler had. I would go thin line, and then it gets thicker as I'm going into the black area, like this. So this is what the penciler was asking for. Okay, so when you're looking at the artwork, it's not just this. This doesn't. Another thing is that this doesn't give a transition of light to medium value to a dark value. It's just, you just have like a shade here and then a black part here. If you are inking like I will say like maybe an amateur penciler, and you wanted to do an effect without the cross hatching, without the cross hatching such as this, I would go in there and ink that like this. Let me demonstrate. So say you had a black area here and you have a light line here. I would start thin, and then I would press down thicker and close to each other, and as I get towards the black area, I would make it black. So let me do that again. There was a little bit of a squiggly line. Let me zoom in. So I would go thin, and then I would go thicker and closer to each other, and then to a point where it touches like that. So this way you have a transition of light to gray to a dark gray to the black area. Okay, let's take a look at, make sure you fill in all these areas, like all these little spots over here. When I'm inking Blast, I would just, some of these lines are a little bit wobbly. I would just go in there and do it quickly, So if I'm inking this piece, I would go in here and kind of go like this, and just keep my hand going the same direction, and then just either go higher or lower, like this, like that. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other areas. Okay, so here on the Flash, we have a nice bold outline, the holding line, but then these fingers, they're so thin. Okay, I know they're fingers, but then they shouldn't be where, even the penciler, when the penciler drew this, the outline of the arm isn't as thick. It's consistent throughout the fingers. Don't make these too thick. Okay, I'm gonna ink this as if I was inking the pencils. So I will go in here, rotate it to where it's comfortable for me, and now ink that line like this, and press in, and then the bottom line I will go a little bit thicker, like that, and I will rotate here, and then each joint of the finger makes a difference. Okay, so I'll look at each knuckle and I'll ink it accordingly. Okay, like this. So here's a knuckle, I'll go thicker. Here's a finger, here's another knuckle, like this. And then here's a joint, and we'll go like this, this, like that, like this. And you bounce the line weights around, like that. So now when you look at the arm, it's not like, it's consistent. It's not like where it's super thick back here and it's thin back there. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other areas. Yeah, so the faces, this is the second time I'm seeing this. The faces, I see like a really thin line in comparison to this line over here. So I would thicken up that part. Again, whatever is in the front, you really need to thicken up the objects in the front. Like for example, this needs to be thicker, or the other option is to have that line back here thinner. Okay, so I would just go here and thicken up this line right over here. Okay, Let's take a look. Yeah, practice inking hands a little bit. When you're inking the hands, it looks like it's just, you know, it's just trace. It's just trace, but there's no line weights to it. I'm gonna ink this hand and demonstrate how I would approach inking this hand. So we have the back of the palm. We have the knuckles. We have each finger like this. I'm gonna ink whichever fingers that's closest to the viewer first, like that. And then we have this finger. And then we have the middle finger. And then we have the pointy finger. And then we have the thumb. Okay, this is how I would approach inking this hand. Okay, so when we take a look at the hand in comparison to this hand, there is a difference in seeing whatever's in the front and whatever's in the back. Okay, let's take a look at some more. Yeah, so practice inking hands a little bit more, Daniel. Right over here. Yeah, like it looks like you're changing up some of the art style over here. Okay, I'm gonna ink this thumb of this finger for you. So right here, like this, thicker here, go like this, like that, and then we have this thumb. I mean the ring finger, and then we have the middle finger, the knuckles, and then we have the thumb here, and then this part, and then this finger. Okay. Yeah. So don't forget about line weights when you're inking the fingers also. Some of these hatch lines, you're missing a whole bunch over here. So these areas, make sure you ink those in. Okay, so when we're looking at the pencils, you see how much hatch lines from the light source. Make sure you have all those drawn in correctly. Okay, so that's the first panel. Let's take a look at the second panel. So the second panel, we have a lot going on, and it's hard to see what's happening. Okay, so when I'm looking at the pencils, it's clear that I can see which object is in the front and which object is in the back. But when it's inked, everything kind of meshes together. So I will go in here and thicken up this line, just to pop it forward. Thicken up here, thicken up this part. Okay, thicken up this part, thicken up this part. Okay, take a look at the pencils. The pencils goes like this. Yeah, there's a lot of things that you didn't ink completely. So this part, we need to ink that line a little bit thicker, and then we need to fill all of this out and then ink this line. Okay, so when I ink comic books, I'm not just inking whatever is there. I'm also thinking about, as a artist myself, how I would pencil it. In a way, in actuality, what I do is I imagine myself as the person that penciled this piece, but except someone else penciled it, and then I'm going in there and I'm inking it. And then when I'm inking it, that is my final line, and I want to make everything clear. So we have this part of this should be a little bit thicker just to pop this forward. Same with all this. These needs to be a little bit thicker over here. Same with all these things that are in the front. Okay, the holding line of this also needs to be thicker because we need to pop this forward. Each of these things over here, they also need to be a little bit thicker. Okay, the legs over here, especially this let's call it an elbow. If this elbow is here, popping forward in the foreground, this needs to be thicker. Okay, this needs to be a lot thicker. Okay, just to pop it forward. These little pieces over here also needs to be thicker. Okay, I like the texture, the bloopiness of this inking texture. That looks pretty good. Some of these buildings, I know there's a lot of buildings, and then you're freehanding it. When I ink comic books, anything that's like a building and structure, I would like to use a ruler. I know Brian Hitch, the penciler who drew this, he just drew it freehand, but I like to have those lines a little bit more straight, like maybe with a straight edge. Or if you're not using a straight edge, try to ink those lines a little bit faster, because if you don't, it looks like ruins. It almost looks like old rubble, unless that's what the script calls for. Okay, Superman. Okay, so let's take a look at Superman's line work here. So the pencils, same thing again. We have cross hatching that's happening over here. Also cross hatching that's happening here. Another thing is, I noticed that you have these lines that doesn't match each other here. So I would kind of like clean that up a little bit, and then crosshatch. If you were gonna leave it like that, if that was an inker's decision, thicken up some of these lines so you don't have like a gray tone and then all of a sudden a black tone, all of a sudden like another gray tone. You want that to be consistent gradually from a light area to the medium area to a dark medium to a black. So this doesn't make sense that there's a light and then a black and then a chunk over there. Make sure you make that a little bit more consistent. So I'm just gonna go in here and kind of like cross hatch some of this. Okay, the line weight on this looks pretty good on the side of the face. Thicken up this a little bit more. Let's take a look. The hair, make sure your let me see, image size. Okay, you scanned this one's at 200 dpi. The lines are kind of scratchy. Okay, another thing to focus on when you're drawing. Okay, so Brian Hitch had this whole area black. You went in there and created hatch lines over there. Okay, so if you were going to do hatch lines, make sure you're spacing them evenly, because when we're looking at this, look how closely these two lines are. Look how closely these lines are. But when we get to here, we have this one that's so far apart, and then this one's far apart, and then this one's far apart. But here you have one that's like so narrow here. When you're inking lines, when you're hatching lines and you're cross hatching lines, you want to make sure the spacing in between each line is spaced evenly. Okay, and then when you cross hatch, you want to keep that idea the same. You want to space each line evenly. So when you're done, you have these diamond shapes that's similar in sizes. See, like that diamond shape here, that's similar in size, or this diamond shape that's similar in size. When I look at this, we'll see that you have one large diamond here, you have a narrow diamond here, and you have a long skinny diamond here. So that doesn't create a gradation. It creates it draws the viewer to that area like it was incorrectly. If you have Superman's side on the chest so thick, you want to make sure this is also a little bit thicker. You want to keep that same thickness throughout, and also line weights. Okay, look how thick you have this person's shoulder right over here, and if that's that thick, you want to thicken up this part too. Okay. Okay. Again, same thing. Okay, so this crowd scene, there's a whole bunch that's going on. Like, first of all, you didn't ink this part. Make sure you ink that part in. And then over here, you have lines that are kind of like going into the person's arm. Not only that, the arm over here, this arm, that line weight over here is thinner than the background. Okay, so let's take a look at the penciler, see how that is. So the penciler drew that background a little bit lighter, and you drew it a little bit thicker. I see what you're thinking. You're thinking that I'm gonna thicken up this line. I'm gonna thicken up that line and then make it look like there's like a shadow part. But then that the building draws attention away from the foreground characters. Now the characters in the front looks like it's not that important. It looks like the building in the front is more important. Okay, building it back is more important. So I would go in here and thicken up these lines instead, and then don't make these lines back here that thick. The backgrounds, don't make them that thick. Okay. Also thicken up these areas. Thicken up this head. Yeah, and then this head over here. I know Brian Hitch drew it, like he quickly drew it, but your job is to go in there as inker to make it look better. Even though if the penciler didn't make it look nice, you as an inker, you're the artist that does the final artwork of this. So you want to make sure everything is inked nicely. Don't go at it as penciler drew that way, so I'm just gonna ink it that way. You want to make the art look a little bit nicer. Okay, so right here we have a pole. Looks like there's a pole here, and then you have this box here, and then I don't know what that box is. Let me take a look at the pencils. So the penciler drew this box here. I don't know if this is supposed to be this building, or this is like, maybe it's the back of a truck. Okay, so this is another case where your line weights are off. Okay, so if this light post is in the front, this light post should be thicker. Okay, that light post should be thicker. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and thicken up this light pole over here on both sides, just to pop that out in the foreground. A lot of these areas, make sure you fill in all the black areas. There's like, I don't think the penciler want those little specks of white over here. Okay, make sure you fill all those in. Okay, use a ruler when you're inking. Use a ruler and lines. Make sure these are inked nicely. Some of the windows over here doesn't really, like all of these reflection part over here. It looks, oh no, it doesn't look right. Let me see how the penciler drew it. So the penciler drew it the same way. So the penciler made this look like a glass window, and this is reflection. So the way I would make this look more like a reflection is I would go in here with white lines and then break up this part. Okay, break up this part. So it looks like glass. Okay, along the edge that you just drew, like this part, also along this side, just break them up a little bit, as well as this side. So here's glass on the right side of each one, like this. So now when you look at it, now it looks a little bit more like glass. Use a ruler. Yeah, these lines are wobbly, Daniel. Yeah, use a ruler, okay? Use a ruler if you can. Okay, and then Wonder Woman, the eyes are a little bit wonky. Let me see how, okay. So when the penciler drew it, both eyes are pretty much the same size, but when you drew it, you have the eyes that's a little bit off. When you're inking, when you're drawing in general, the first thing any readers will look at is the eyes first, and then the hand gestures. So make sure the eyes are done correctly. Okay, so this eye is a little bit off. Okay, make it a little bit larger. Even the star is not complete. Okay, finish those lines. There's all these, I don't know what all these white specks are, Daniel. Maybe you're starting to use Photoshop, you're scanning it, but they should be nice and dark. I see a lot of white specks in there. Usually when an artist is scanning it, there might be like a little bit of a black specks on the outside, but there's a lot of white specks inside your artwork. I don't know why you have that much white specks. Let me look at the pencils. I don't think the penciler left those white specks over here. So if you're using a brush, the best way that I like to ink to get rid of these corner edges is to have the tip of my brush going this way, like this, and then I would press into it just to get rid of all those black areas, the white areas. Okay, so yeah, this is Daniel's JSA piece that he inked over Brian Hitch, some of the DC comic characters. Well, there you have it. That is one of my patron's artwork inking. He sent it to me for art critique and review. If you're interested in being one of my patrons, check out my Patreon page. It's patreon.com/WaldenWongArt, and over there there's different tiers that you can subscribe to. And if you want me to look at your work, there's also a mentorship tier too. So please like and share my channel. And for those of you who want to know a little bit more about me, check out my website. It's WaldenWongArt.com, and over there there's different things that you can look at. There's a gallery, there's a store, there's even a big Amazon affiliate link button where you can order some of the same art supplies that I use. So until then, keep on drawing, keep practicing, and the more you draw, the better you get at it. Take care and have a good day. Bye-bye.